Hello everyone, it's Jess Conto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film, and continuing my dive now into the prime of Steven Spielberg's career as we take a look at E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, and I have my wife joining me for the first time as my wife.
It's true.
Thank you for coming on, Jess.
Contractually obligated to now.
Because of this. But if you haven't tuned into our show before, we have 3 segments. We start off with coming attractions for the week that this show releases, because I always drop this on a Friday. And then we talk about our feature film, which is E.T., and then we do some recommendations for everybody. But specifically this is being recorded a little bit early with a few other things, because we're going to be going away for a couple weeks, and I'm not doing anything. So this will be dropping on Friday, June 24th. So we have our coming attractions for Friday, June 24th. Jess, what movie are you most excited to see?
I'm pretty excited for Marcel the Shell with shoes on, because I cry every time I watch the trailer.
It's so A24.
It's so cute.
And it is adorable.
He's such a little guy.
And I'm pretty sure it's Jenny Slate that voices Marcel.
Aww.
It is Jenny Slate. I got that correct. But like watching the trailer, it seems so interesting and quirky and weird, and I love it. And just the whole little stop motion with like the little shell with shoes on and the whole bigger world and stuff like that. But
he's a little guy.
You excited?
I am.
We're going to have to figure out when we're going to see it. But my pick for coming attractions, which some of the big films coming out that weekend as well, is The Black Phone, which Scott Derrickson's like, goodbye, Doctor Strange 2, I'm doing this instead. And it has Ethan Hawke returning to work with Derrickson after the movie Sinister. And also The Man from Toronto, which seems like it's some kind of silly Kevin Hart, Woody Harrelson action comedy for Netflix. But what I'm most excited about, which shocks the hell out of me, because I hate Baz Luhrmann, is Elvis. And honestly, it's because I love Elvis. And the trailer did get me. I am a little hesitant now after finding out the movie's 2 hours and 39 minutes. And I'm just like, God, this better not be Australia all over again. Mm-hmm. But I believe it's, I think it's Austin Butler. See, I should have double checked that. I did see an article recently about why they picked Austin Butler over Harry Styles to be Elvis, because Harry Styles was also up to be Elvis.
I've never seen a picture of Harry Styles.
I'm sure you saw him in Eternals. Which we could spoil that after the credits scene now, because that came out in November. So he was Star Fox, Thanos' brother, who pops up at the end.
Oh, I don't remember.
You probably remember. Is that Patton Oswalt's voice? Because that's what I remember about that after the credit scene.
That's probably what
and the grotesque. Oh
yeah, I did say that.
Like grotesque, weird CGI, because you could definitely tell they weren't 100% done with the CGI of Patton Oswalt's character. But Austin Butler is playing Elvis. Tom Hanks notoriously got COVID in Australia filming this movie. Who had, I saw somebody, what kind of accent is this? I looked it up. He's Dutch.
Dutch, isn't it? Yeah.
So, yes, that's why he has a weird accent, because it's Dutch. Which is a very interesting accent that I feel like most Americans are not prepared for. Yeah. Or to hear Tom Hanks
with an accent, yeah.
But, not gonna lie, the second I watched that trailer for the first time, I'm like, damn, Baz Luhrmann, you got me sold. No matter how much I want to admit it, because I'm just not a fan. There are certain things about Gatsby that I love, because, how can't you love Leo as Gatsby? But I'm just this movie is way too much. And this is probably going to be a lot, but it's also Elvis, so it should probably be. So, and apparently Tame Impala music's in it.
Yeah.
Along with a bunch of other people.
Also, Diana Ross and Tame Impala on the Minions soundtrack, the next Minions movie. Heard that coming home yesterday.
Is it a new song?
Yeah.
What?
Or I guess whatever Despicable Me. So the people announcing on the radio obviously are not up on their Despicable Me lore because they didn't know what the next movie was, which is great because
Minions,
I didn't either.
The Rise of Gru.
Okay, so
know
Minions,
your stuff.
The Rise of Gru. To be fair, they knew who was in it.
What?
So Diana Ross featuring Tame Impala. So Kevin Parker got in on. Yeah.
And they used Eminem in the most recent trailer. I'll be talking about this for my Temple of Doom episode because that's what's coming out that weekend is Rise of Gru. Oh, interesting.
As someone who works with children, I have zero desire to see the movie.
You already
sure
saw
I'll
it.
see it.
If you watch the trailer once, you've seen the whole damn movie.
I'm sure I'll see it piecemeal until I've memorized it.
But, so, that's what's coming out on June 24th. It's an interesting mix of, you know, some mainstream stuff, the Black Phone's been anticipated for a while at this point. They kept pushing it back. And then you have some art house stuff like Marcel and Flux Gourmet. And then you have Elvis, which I have a sinking feeling the Elvis movie is going to be a big deal. But Black Phone's definitely going to make a bunch of money.
I hope they accurately depict how young Priscilla was when he met her and was like, this one, I would like this 14, I believe.
There you go. She spoke very highly of the film.
She really, they had an interesting marriage. I did the old Wikipedia page.
The old Wikipedia page. But what our feature film of the week is E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, which is the 1982 sci-fi family adventure where Steven Spielberg, previously doing Close Encounters of the Third Kind, dug into aliens, or should I say, aliens. But this time, much more mainstream and, like, family accessible. Because Close Encounters...
Sure, it's definitely not terrifying at all.
So, Jess, why did you want to come on and talk about E.T.?
I was menaced as a child by E.T. Because my mom... Please look this up. She had a leather doll that was E.T. that was really terrifying to me. And I was already afraid of the house that we lived in because it was this big old spooky house that may or may not have been haunted, depending on who you asked. But he was in her room, which I still have nightmares of, and I still have nightmares of this E.T. doll. So I didn't actually see E.T. until I was an adult because I was terrified.
There you go. I have to say, Jess built this up so much, and I was expecting, like, an accurate, like, leather, wrinkly E.T. doll. I'm like, oh, that's definitely terrifying. Especially as a kid. Because, like, E.T.'s not cute. Like, E.T.'s like this weird, leathery, kind of, like, Skeletor-looking thing.
Just like that doll.
Except the doll, when you finally showed me a picture of it, it's just, like, this weird, smooth, vinyl-looking thing. Yeah. And I'm just like...
Well, what you didn't see is that it started to crack along the joints, so then it was even
dry
scarier.
rotted. But, so E.T. is the story of a young boy, a troubled child, summons the courage to help a friendly alien escape from Earth and return to his home planet.
Is he troubled? Was that code for weird?
Well,
it's a little odd.
You know, I think he has some problems because, like any good Steven Spielberg movies, there's a deadbeat dad who left his family. So you have a single mom trying to raise a teenage son, and then you have Elliot, played by Henry Thomas, which, good for Henry Thomas, who is still acting and stuff. Which, usually child stars, that doesn't happen, but I think he could give a big thank you to Mike Flanagan, because he has shown up in Ouija, Origin of Evil, Haunting a Hill House, Haunting of Blythe Manor, and Midnight Mass. So, like, Henry Thomas just...
spoopy movies now?
Well, I think he just has a great gig working with Mike Flanagan, who exclusively makes spoopy movies.
Yeah.
And television series.
Don't forget that Elliot is also, and his mother, menaced by their youngest child.
Jess really hates Gertie, played by Drew Barrymore, who honestly is the biggest named person in this movie.
Don't at me. She's just, like, every failing in their plan comes down to her.
So you have Drew Barrymore, who plays Gertie. Peter Coyle, who is also in the film, plays Keys, well, I believe he's one of the scientists. You have Dee Wallace, who plays the mother in the film, who, you know, she's just trying to do her best. Honestly.
She's doing her best.
She's doing her best. She has a couple weird kids and just a teenage son, just being a teenage son. And then you got to deal with aliens, so that just makes life even harder. And M&M's probably hates this movie because, you know, they did not want to...
The old offer they didn't accept.
They got offered a merchandising deal. Reese's Pieces. Reese's got it.
Reese's Pieces more, though.
I do like Reese's Pieces more. I'm a peanut butter person.
Hershey's a company,
but yeah, they made buku bucks thanks to E.T. loving his Reese's Pieces. But so basically, the film opens with a spaceship coming down, which the special effects in this are top notch for 1982, very similar to Close Encounters, and you know, a bunch of nondescript government agents, which I think the best part about this movie is they're all nondescript government agents. Even when they're like coming up the street with like the sun behind them, you can't see any of their faces, and it just like
authority figures are like that.
Yep, and I think that builds tension and intrigue, and it's an aesthetic, and I think it works.
Well, it probably plays to the childhood aspects of it too, because like that's how kids see a lot of people.
Yeah, it's the Peanuts effect.
I mean, or maybe it's just me since I have prosopagnosia, but I don't remember a lot of faces.
I think it built a lot of intrigue, and there's a lot of intrigue at the beginning of this film. You're kind of like, what's going on? What are these creatures?
They're making
and of
horrifying sounds.
Yeah.
It's worse than that.
Poor E.T. does.
Scary.
E.T. makes a lot of weird sounds. And this poor child, alien child, gets left behind by accident, and you know, we get introduced to Elliot's family, and you slowly have like that moment in the backyard where you have the light coming from like the little shed, and you see E.T. like silhouette for the first time, and you're just like, why is there a little old man walking into this kid's backyard?
I would say as scary as that moment in Signs where you see the alien.
Here's the thing, though. Steven Spielberg does lean on horror elements in this film to build suspense and intrigue. And he did the same thing in Close Encounters of the Third Kind because he knows humanity. Like, legitimately. I think that's one of the strongest elements of Steven Spielberg films is he knows people, he knows how people act, he knows how people feel. And there's a sense of paranoia and fear about the unknown that we all have. And he builds up those elements until that guard's taken down with E.T. And then, you know, how you feel about his specific appearance will affect your viewing experience of this movie.
Not
like,
as horrifying as the doll.
You know he's benevolent at a certain point. And he's a naive child. He is a child. Because, you know, one of my favorite scenes of this whole entire movie, Elliot's off to school and they have this interesting connection, but E.T.'s cracking open some cold ones and gets Elliot drunk at school. And there's this whole entire sequence because E.T.'s watching TV and just projecting it. There's a slow motion moment where like Elliot spins around the girl that he loves that 100% looks like Brooke Shields might actually be Brooke Shields.
You're talking about after the liberation of the Bronx.
Sorry, it's Erica Elenikiak. Plays Pretty Girl. That's specifically her credit.
You need to write her an apology right now.
Hey, I said she looked like Brooke Shields, so that's...
Did we see her face?
Yeah.
Oh.
Like, she 100% looks like Brooke Shields. And then he does, like, this slow motion spin, and then he's too short, so he steps on top of another kid and kisses her.
That kid handled it pretty well, honestly. He was like, alright.
And, like, that's one of those, like, special Spielberg moments, like, in the film. And fun fact, if you don't know who plays the teacher, it's actually Harrison Ford. And the main reason I know is there's an actual cut, there's, like, a deleted scene of him, I think, meeting with Elliot's mom. And it's Harrison Ford. And so,
I can tell right away from the voice.
Yeah, you can tell from his voice. Like, he's doing, like, a little bit of, like, a more nasally voice.
I was going to say, it sounds like a teacher.
Trying to hide, like, he's a nerd. He's nerd Harrison Ford, like he is in the classroom, except all the college students, like young women, want to get in his pants in Indiana Jones.
I forgot how like forward they are, and that's what we were
Oh my
with
God.
the love you.
I'm sure
Dang.
I'll talk about it with Adam, because I'm recording this episode before I record with Adam for Raiders.
He's doing a Quentin
but,
Tarantino recording thing.
She closes her eyes and says, "Love you," and just like, oh my God, these girls are thirsty. And
good for them. Are you telling me if you had Harrison Ford as a professor, you wouldn't lust for him?
I'll admit, I don't think I ever had a male professor in college that looked like Harrison Ford.
Oh, I didn't either.
So...
Oh, you're a college professor. Adjunct.
I'm an adjunct instructor.
Well, okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I know that the union would have a...
We won't get into that.
Moment.
So...
You can go ahead and cut that.
I have to find it first. But...
I'll do jazz hands.
One of my favorite moments is like that whole little scene at the school because it's so crazy and like, yes, he releases all the frogs.
I really enjoyed when he calls her and she's like, "Are you sure you have the right Elliot?"
Elliot was drunk at school. And obviously it's a Steven Spielberg movie, so there's like heavy emotional moments too. And obviously the whole Flower E.T. Elliot like sharing life force thing and like Elliot's slowly coming back and E.T.'s just like straight dead and his whole body's gray and everything. That's a upsetting scene where Elliot's brother finds him in like the drain and he's just gray.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that'd be terrifying
And
as a
their
kid.
mom freaks out and they're all like, "No."
And that's a really upsetting sequence. And like when E.T. finally comes back and like Henry Thomas's voice cracks like crazy when he's like laughing.
E.T. acts like he got the Pulp Fiction treatment because he's just like nonstop talking.
Oh, and you know, there's some great moments and like the little Lucasfilm nod where they're out walking around and E.T. under like a ghost. Hi Sadie, we have a second special guest today. We got our cat here. She also was probably in the room while we were watching E.T. because usually she is.
They watch TV.
Yeah. But the scene where E.T. goes up to Yoda, which is canon, because in Phantom Menace, E.T.'s species is indeed in the Senate room. So, maybe he recognized Yoda. Same universe, Amblin, Lucasfilm connection right there.
It's the Star Wars cinematic extended universe.
It's the Lucasfilm's extended universe. Indiana Jones is a part of it. The aliens from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull were also part of the Senate.
Don't even bring that up. That was the first Indiana Jones film I saw, and I was so mad about it. I was like, why do people like this franchise? This is garbage, and I didn't realize.
Started in the wrong place.
I didn't realize it was the worst.
I will be having a whole episode about it. But with this film... And, you know, there's the iconic moments of, like, Elliot and E.T. on the bike going across the moon, and then the police having this blockade, and all the kids just riding up into the sky. And, you know, of course, I'll be right here. And, like, all those moments, and when they dressed E.T. up in drag, that was legitimately funny. And he's, like, waddling around. And then when Gertie sees E.T. for the first time and E.T.'s neck just goes full blown like, Rah! Sorry, Sadie. Sadie didn't like that. But Jess, what are some of your favorite moments in the movie?
Of course, the frog liberation scene. That's a great one. I do like the scene where he brings the flower back because it made me less terrified of him. I was like, "Aw, I have a lot of plants. I kill some sometimes. It'd be nice to have a little E.T. Little E.T. guy." Life. But then the end, like, when, you know, it's just a really thrilling chase scene, and you're like, "Oh man, there they go." And me being an adult was like, "That's so stupid that they think that one guy in a car can catch, like, what, 8 children on bikes?" I'm like, what are you gonna do?
This is a nondescript small town, Jess.
I know, but like...
Where does this take place?
Los Angeles, I think. Isn't that the silhouette they saw at the beginning? Like, it's definitely somewhere in California, I would say, probably.
It checks out because
See,
Steven Spielberg's from the Southwest.
Yeah, it looked like a California town to me.
Where does E.T. take place?
suburban town in California. Yeah.
There you go.
Because it's very like deserty.
Nondescript, not nondescript town in suburban California. But obviously the one thing we buried and haven't talked about yet that's one of the most iconic parts of this is the fact that John Williams
made a soundtrack.
An amazing score for this. And like just the E.T. theme is one of the most iconic pieces of film score ever. And just that mysticism, the magic as they're like flying across the sky and just how the music all just swells, it's just perfect. And John Williams and Steven Spielberg are legitimately probably the greatest tandem of composer and directors ever because, my God, does John Williams just crank out hits. And I just feel like most Steven Spielberg movies would not be quite there if it wasn't for what John Williams was laying down, because you have Jaws, you have Indiana Jones, and like obviously John Williams has done other things too with like Star Wars and Harry Potter, and just basically everything he does just elevates it, and E.T.'s definitely one of those experiences. I think in general the story, it's simple, it's very family oriented, there's a lot of themes about family and home.
Just like Fast and Furious.
See that? And I was going to say better than Fast and Furious could ever wish to be.
I enjoyed it more.
But, I do think this is obviously one of Spielberg's most accessible films, definitely his most mainstream, what you could enjoy with the whole family. One of the things that I wanted to talk about too, which is probably my last point, is you could tell the stark difference between filmmaking in the 80s versus filmmaking today because of the cinematography. Because you watch a family film today, it's just flooded with light. There's no shadows, nothing. It looks all sterile. Like 99% of Marvel movies have no shadow or just all flooded with light. But, that's a whole entire other conversation. Even the simplest scenes of like the kids walking into the house and opening the refrigerator, there's so many shadows and the light is so prominent. And I think that's why the light is so impactful in the scene when the kids are flying across the sky, in the scene where the nondescript government agents are walking down the street, is because light means something when you don't flood the whole entire movie with it. And whether it's The Godfather, whether it's basically any Steven Spielberg movie, and especially here, he really utilizes those shadows to make it feel real. And there's so many shots in this film that are so important with the lighting, like we talked about the shed scene when you see E.T. for the first time. If everything's just flooded with light, they don't have that like textured. And also probably the fact that it's shot on film too adds that
there's a texture
for sure.
It's like granular.
And it just pops. And I think it needs to be said because especially in like family friendlier films, you don't see that kind of stuff anymore because it's cheaper to just flood it and not try to get the right bit of like shadow. It's definitely easier. It's a lot easier to just flood a room full of light than trying to figure out the cinematography and how the lighting is going to sit on everything.
I want to mention the opening scene too because there's a lot of silhouettes in that. And then his spaceship is also lit. Or I guess their spaceship.
And they use the lighting from the spaceship in a really great way too, just like they did in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and which is why both of them work so perfectly. And I feel like E.T. is the more family-friendly version of like Spielberg sci-fi versus like Close Encounters is a much more hard science fiction, more mature version of that. And it's interesting because I remember watching Close Encounters for the first time in college and not appreciating it anywhere near as much as E.T., but then watching it now, reverse. Like, I
grow into it.
I really enjoy E.T. a lot, and I think it is a great film, but I think Close Encounters just has a lot more depth and a lot more to offer versus, like, this is a very simple narrative and has a lot of heart, though. You care. And you feel a lot of things, and it's very iconic at this point, and you want to go on that journey with Elliot and E.T. Maybe not Gertie, if you're Jess.
She's not in it a lot. Just every time she was, I was like, this girl.
But, like, Drew Barrymore did a really good job for a young actress, because, like, she's only, like, probably, like, I don't know, 5 or 6.
Here's the thing. Kids are annoying. Like, it's about Elliot. Not his shit-ass 3-year-old, 4-year-old sister. Who, you know, name me a child who's that age. I mean, there's a lot of kids who aren't, but many of them are annoying.
Pains in the butt.
I know.
And we have our child here, little Sadie.
Gazing lovingly up at me.
Now, those are our thoughts on E.T. So it's time for our last segment of the show, which is some recommendations. So, Jess, what would you like to recommend to the wonderful people out there?
I believe I went with Memoria, which if you have sensory sensitivities to sound, please don't see this. Please don't torture yourself that way. Or wear sound dampening earbuds or headphones. But it was, I mean, as far as the plot goes, I found it confusing, but I really did like the experience of going through that and just listening to the sound. It helped that we saw it in the theater.
It is very artful, and it's very artful and very just. It is definitely something where it's just like this director wanted to create a work of art for 2 hours and 20 minutes. Taking its time, holding on very long on static shots and everything. It's definitely not for everybody. I don't know if Sadie would have sat through 2 hours and 20 minutes of it.
She can barely sit through 5 minutes of petting Sadie.
But now Sadie would love to recommend to you, along with myself, the film Benediction. And this is a story about Siegfried Sassoon, who was a poet during World War I. And he was gay and was sent away during the war to deal with his health issues. Because, you know, that was a big problem back then. And between Jack Lowden and Peter Capaldi's performances, it's really impactful. It's a wonderful film. It's also 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's an investment.
It's a long film, and it is quite an impactful film. And Peter Capaldi is as grumpy as hell as ever. And, like, it takes a while for you to see Jack Lowden turn into him because, you know, it's about his life. But, like, oh my God, there's some moments. But that's this week on Welcome to the Wasteland. Jess, thank you for coming on as always.
Of course.
Would you like to shamelessly plug anything?
Oh my God, like what? Quilting.
Foxy Trainwreck.
Foxy that's my Instagram name. And it is Crafts and Carbs is my public one. I mean, if anyone has any interest in quilting, or I don't really post a lot.
Hey, you could shamelessly plug whatever you like.
Foxy Trainwreck's my private one. I won't lie to you unless I know you.
Yeah. I just thought it was funny. But yeah, so
yes.
So follow Jess's quilting.
Crafts and Carbs.
Crafts and Carbs. And, you know, thank you, as always, for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.